So good evening, everybody. I'd like to acknowledge that we are privileged to gather on the traditional territory of the Kwakwa speaking people and call the meeting to order. Are there any additions or amendments to the agenda?
I can get that COVID letter.
Yep. So under 10B, there is a letter of support for the acronym DEEP program,
Correct.
Digital Elevation Expertise Program. So we'll put that under 10B. And if there's no other additions, can I have a motion to accept the agenda as amended? And me and Ryan. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, this evening we have Leanne Ruel with us with North Island Community Services to present a proposal for a waterfront community project. So welcome. I think if you, let's see where we can slide you in so you can be on the camera. Yep. We'll just keep walking that way. We'll tell you when you're in.
Over my desk or something.
There we go. A little bit more. There you go. Excellent. So if I can ask you also to speak.
Yes, clearly.
Thank you. Well,
Just one correction. I'm actually with the Crisis and Counseling Center, not Community Services. But they are aware, Community Services is actually aware of this and are quite willing to be part of it as well. So I've had a conversation with them. So if you guys all had a chance to read my proposal, there is a group of us that have gotten together. So this is not a new proposal by any means. My children are in their late 20s now, and this was an idea that we had even back then. So it never really got off the ground back then, but there's a group of us now that are quite motivated to see this happen for our community. We do feel that it would be a great enhancement to our infrastructure as a community to have play spaces and a community gathering space for all ages to use. So, like I said in my proposal, our community play spaces that we have available to children are definitely aging. Like I mentioned, the Centennial Ball Field Park is pretty abysmal and has been standing for probably 60 years since it was first put in. And the other two community parks that the town is responsible for are really in obscure locations and hard to find, especially if you're a new resident to town or a visitor to our town. They're almost impossible to find. And you know, they need some love and care as well. They're I haven't been to the one in between the subdivisions up on Chelan, but it was pretty overgrown and in need of some repair last time I was there, which was probably close to 15 years ago. So not sure of the state now, but I think it would be beneficial for us as a community to really think about how we use our waterfront, because there's sorry. So Jaylina is my co-champion of this project. When I asked her to be a part of it, she jumped on board eagerly and said, yeah, let's do this. What do we need to make it happen? So our idea for this is kind of came about when the Curling Club was doing their crowdfunding campaign, and it was a brilliant move on their part, and they were able to raise quite a bit of money in a very short amount of time. And I think a community space would have much more foothold because it benefits the whole community, where the Curling Club is a small user group, but we still got a lot of community drive to support that project, right? So this is where we think that we could really make it a community-led project by having community buy-in and support the project through a crowdfunding campaign. So I just have handouts.
Sure.
So like I said, we envision this being a community gathering space for all ages. anchored by children's play spaces. So what we're looking at doing is having a play space for younger children, so under the age of 5, one for older children up to the age of 12, and then we want to do a fitness circuit for young youth and adults and into seniors, right? Sort of modeled after the way Parksville has their community park, where it has pavilions where people can gather. I have a vision board that I will show you in a minute of some ideas that we have. So we are looking at doing gardening and seating for people so that even if you don't have children, you can go down and enjoy the waterfront in the park and sit in the gardens on a bench and have a cup of coffee. You don't necessarily have to have a child. Like we were talking the other day, if you wanted to go and sit up at the dinosaur park at Cedar Park there, and you're a senior with no children and you're just going to sit there and have a cup of coffee, you're going to look kind of creepy in that place, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the waterfront is a community space, so it'll have picnic benches and places where people can go and gather and not feel that they're in a place because there's a children's playground nearby. We want it to be aesthetically pleasing, and so we would like to put a fence in that is pleasing to the eye, but separates the boat launch area from the grass area so that it adds that element of safety for children. And we want to do a covered or open, kind of, we haven't really talked about exactly what is going to be in the plan because we're not quite there yet. So we would like to see a multi-use pavilion so that we could do outdoor music nights, Orcfest could do their presentations from there, we could do outdoor theater and dance productions off of there, and really have a place where community can go. We want to create a space for all our residents to enjoy, so whether you're a toddler, you're a teen, you're a senior, or somewhere in between, everybody can go and use that space. So what we kind of looked at is the population of our community. So I did a couple breakdowns just to get an idea of where we're going with this. So if we had, say, 3,000 people each contribute $20, that's our $60,000 goal right there, right? If we had 1,500 people donate $40, that would be our 60,000 goal, and then break it down even further, right? By having businesses do sponsorships and that sort of thing as well. We've kind of allowed 12 to 18 months for this project, but again, that will be determined on the funding as well as the scale of the project. It might go really good and we can do a few more things, or we might have to scale it back. So that's kind of what we're looking at. So what we're asking is if the town would support this idea, for one, and we would like to be able to do a crowdfunding, but have the money come directly to a pot here in town, so it offers that transparency and that legitimacy to the project. So people know when they're sending money somewhere, it's not coming to me in my personal bank account, right? So yeah, so that's kind of what we're looking at, as well as the space itself, having the use of the space, and then the maintaining and installation of the project through the public works. So I do have experience doing playgrounds. I've done several of them, including the one at Sunset, the one that used to be down at Huckleberry House. We just put one in Port Hardy. So I do have quite an extensive knowledge of the Canadian safety standards that playgrounds need to adhere to. So that is something that I'm well aware of when we are looking at ordering equipment. I have 2 playground suppliers that are going to be working with me to give me some quotes and ideas on what we can use in the space. And then we want to open that up to, again, community engagement. What do our community members want to see down there? What kind of style? So if we want it more nature-based or muted colors, bright colors, or what the community is looking at doing. So both the companies that I am working with are Canadian-based companies. So Habitat was one that we used when we did the playground at Chesapeake, which is now, I believe, at Sunset, the bigger one. And then Canadian Recreation Solutions is another one that we just used to do the playground at the daycare in Port Hardy. So those are 2 companies that I have fairly good relationship with, and their prices are actually fairly reasonable. So this is just kind of an idea of what we're looking at. So having a space for ages from like 1.5 to 5, a bigger area for the older children, a community gathering space in the middle, so made up with gardens and just a warm feeling where people can go. And then the exercise or fitness circuit is a great addition to any community because anybody can use that, right? So, and then we want to make it so it fits in with what's down there already, doesn't take away from the space that we have, and that other groups, such as when we do OrgFest, will still have space down there to be able to use it. So,
Can I get you to do me a favor?
yes.
Look at the camera there and just a little closer so that they can get a screen grab of it.
Am I right in the way?
That's okay, it doesn't matter about us,
Okay.
just so long as, okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And now old and new technology.
So I've
Thank you.
done a whole lot of talking. Does anybody have questions they want to fire at me?
So before I open up to council, and I don't know if we have the chance to be able to talk, so when somebody makes a presentation to council, we, the delegate says we don't make a decision that
Yes.
evening. But I will tell you that it will go on to another agenda where we'll have an open discussion and we'll let you know when that occurs.
Okay.
I'm just gonna ask a question, then I'll open it up. How do you plan on gathering community input?
Well, we're gonna have to do some community gatherings, so we can do first like a poll, online poll, and then we can put surveys out in the different business locations so people can have a chance to say. And then we may do a gathering if we get to that point where we're allowed to do a gathering of people so that people can have a look at the plans, do some input, and just really make it a community effort. I think it needs to be.
Anybody else have any questions?
Maybe a comment. Because my daughter was living over in the Lower Mainland for a little bit, I have seen a few of their parks, and there's some really creative parks there, and they utilize what is part of the natural surroundings. So instead of
Absolutely.
having metal posts, they're wood posts.
Yeah.
You know, there's zip lines from a climb up. You can do the ladder. You can jump on the zip line and you go. But it's all fits in the setting.
Yeah.
And so
Nature-based playground, which is amazing.
it is,
Yeah.
and I even saw one that was, they had like a ship. It was this ship that was sort of submerged in the sand, and the kids could run around and, leap off, do whatever, all those crazy things.
So-
It just fit.
There
the
is
environment.
a plethora of activities, so you can do very nature-based playgrounds where they look like molded logs and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
We do have the natural resources here to do some of those things. My only concern is longevity of the equipment. So with real wood, it can rot if it's not treated properly, right? So taking in those natural elements, we can definitely do parts of that. Just being so close to the ocean. Metal, on the other hand, will corrode. So yeah, we really have to look at all aspects, and that's why we left that timeline so long, so that we can really get an input from the community.
So I guess my question then is, are you open to exploring different
Absolutely,
types of things to
absolutely,
possibly use within
Yeah,
that space?
absolutely. Yeah, so this was just kind of an idea of what, the ages we want to see and kind of the things that we could do. But yeah, it will be up to the community to decide what goes in there.
Councilor Cole, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Whitstrom. Excuse me. So the pavilion you're talking about is kind of a modest pavilion
Yeah.
like you have there, because that's, pavilions are expensive.
Yeah.
So you're just thinking something small. And I was a little unsure of the location, but I think you made that clear next to the ball fields. Or sorry, not the ball
No.
field, the boat ramp.
Yeah, down at the boat
Yeah.
ramp area, so
Did you-
basically kind of where the old western guest house used to be, and we may have to move when we kind of walk the thing. There might be some structures where we just have to move slightly, like, one was the whale is an amazing location, so that might be one that we just need to maybe relocate it to a different space.
Underground as well. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that was my next question. There's a flat part at the bottom. Are you
Yeah.
envisioning it there or up higher?
Yeah, and like Shelley said, we can even build it into the landscape, so we don't have to do a lot of excavating to be able to get the look we're going for.
So a couple comments, I guess. Are you aware we're about to start our official community plan? And, you know, I'm all for just getting her done, but you're making the assumption the whole town wants it there, okay?
Yeah.
So if you're doing a public engagement
Yeah.
about the department, maybe some people don't want it there, they want a different location, they don't want it all together.
Mhm.
So I'm a little unsure how that's gonna fit in.
Yeah.
It's sort of my devil's
And that's
advocate
something
thing.
that we can definitely ask. I just know, just from talking with community members that I know, that has always been a location that has been forefront of the community wants something there, so.
Okay, and would you envision we get rid of some of the other playgrounds? Because I mean, this, I guess, I assume Public Works would be taking over maintenance and of a new playground.
Yeah.
So I guess that's maybe something for council to consider.
Yes.
Yeah, that, you know, those are my sort of things that jumped out at me, like, you guys look like an awesome group, but do you speak for the whole town when it comes to this project, I guess? And I do like that you've got a realistic time frame here,
Yeah.
to sort of sort that out.
Yeah, and we don't pretend to speak for the whole town at all, but
But
we,
you want to put it out there?
we're gonna put it out there and see what people wanna do, and I think in my heart, I know this is being talked about for 20 years, I think it's something that people want to see. So even grandparents that have no kids, you know, their grandkids might wanna go and play there. They may remember, like I do, when my kids were that young, I would have loved to have something down there to take my kids
So
to.
I guess just in closing, maybe more of a comment for council, maybe we consider a motion or something to tie that in with our OCP process, because we're about to go on with all sorts of surveys and public process. So this is kind of one more there that might confuse things
Or not.
or not.
Yeah, we'll put on the agenda and we can have that discussion. Yeah. Anything else? Oh, okay, sorry.
I was looking at it thinking,
Councilor Mitchell, did you want to ask any questions?
I just want to get it clear in my mind that this is going to be the proponent doing the fundraising for this project, and we're just going to provide support,
Yes,
moral support. Is that what we got going here?
yeah, pretty much.
And
And
the
the
land.
space to put it, and then the maintenance and installation. Like, I know that there'll be a large volunteer group, but it's great to have people oversee the installation.
Right. So once it's built, then it would become the town's responsibility to keep it operating reasonably.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Thank you. Thanks for doing all the legwork on this.
Thank you.
Councilor Barron, did you have any questions? No?
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councilor Cole, thanks, Ryan.
yeah, so I guess, do you plan any sort of nonprofit group or society, or is it just gonna be sort of
So
loosely?
right now, we just have a very loose group of volunteers that are willing to do this. We haven't even considered forming a society because I don't really think it's actually necessary for this project.
It's a short-term goal again.
And yeah, and we're not running the business at the end of it. It's gonna be community use, right, for open to everybody, and it'll be community property when it's done, so.
And so obviously final approval would come to council on
It
design.
absolutely comes to
Public Works
council.
and.
Yep.
So you're looking
Now,
for us then for just approval in principle
In
and we work
principle
towards.
and support for the project if it goes ahead, yeah.
Great. If there's no other questions, I'd like to thank you very much for coming tonight. Your proposal is very thorough. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
Sorry for the
we'll let
typos.
you know, we'll let you know when it's on
Yeah,
next
for sure.
agenda. Okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Item 4A, minutes of the June 23rd, 2020 regular council meeting. Motion to accept them as presented, unless there's any errors or omissions. Seeing none?
I have a comment.
Yes.
When we passed the motion 136, 2020 to put a porta potty at the head of the trail, I don't think we thought it would be there the next day. And so the 2-month trial means it's pulled, you know, right in the middle of August, and so or the end. I'm just wondering if we want to just run that extended to September 30th and then reassess. So, just give staff direction, run it for 3 months because of the way it's staggered.
Or just get rid of the woods for 2 months, trial basis, and once it's not being used. We agree, Justin?
Well, I think the 2 months was to force us to come back and make a call on it. So, yeah. So. The way I read this, staff could pull it in 2 months. It's
Oh, because you
on.
thought it came fast and it'll go fast?
Right.
Fair enough, we'll keep an eye on that
So-
and make sure we discuss it before.
Okay.
On that note, though, I just do want to mention, I wasn't against, I believe that Councillor Barron's is saying, it's not that we were against the porta potty, we both thought it was ugly, but I have to say, it was so quick up there, and then so quick that staff responded to the some of the negative feedback. People were appreciative, but yeah, well done. And for a temporary porta potty, it actually, I can live with it. It looks great. So there's no headline that I poo-pooed the idea. So that's good. But thank you. Thank you very much to staff. That's great. Okay, so motion to accept them as presented, moved, and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. And minutes of July 7th meeting committee of the whole. Moved. Seconder, Councillor Barron. All those in favor? Opposed? Great. All right, couple of items for information. 5A letter from the Rotary Club thanking the Fort McNeil staff for trimming the grass along phase 1 and 2. I included this because I think it's always great to give our public works staff, and I think it's in particular our summer students who do this work. So I just wanted to make sure that they get public recognition of the hard work that they do out there, and it's appreciated. Okay. And item 5B is also for information, but I know that everybody's in different circles. Just wanted to make you aware that the lab in Fort McNeil was reduced for during COVID, and it was supposed to go back to weekends, and it is not. I did receive a call from one concerned citizen. I don't know if anybody else has gotten any concerns, but what they're feeling is it's unfair that people will have to take a day off or half a day off work, some time off work to be able to go get tests done. And it's due to a staffing shortage, but I think it's something that we should keep an eye on. I will continue to communicate with Allison on this and keeps council apprised, but we have to make sure that this doesn't become something that is permanent. Okay.
Maybe a comment is that it is open on Saturdays in Port Hardy. Not that everybody has the means to travel, but if they do, there is an opportunity on Saturdays in Port Hardy.
Okay. So item 7A, we have back at the table again the purchasing policy. So I'd like a motion to move for this discussion. Thank you. Moved and seconded. So Downey and Barron. Okay, so the changes have been made that we requested. I guess I'm looking for anything else from council. And I know if it's okay, I'd like to give Councillor Mitchell the first opportunity because he couldn't hear and had to step out and wasn't part of the complete meeting where we did this purchasing policy. So I'll just ask Councillor Mitchell if there was anything he wanted to add, please.
Well, I just feel like there's some sort of basic deficiencies, but no, I did not do a rewrite, that's for sure.
I don't know if you were here before I open up to the floor. If you had already left at that time, the decision at the end was made that a purchasing policy, though maybe not perfect, is better than the absence of a purchasing policy, and that we could look at putting a policy committee together and working on it further in the fall.
Well, I would concur with both those statements. I think it'd be great to have a policy. No policy is very good at all. And so a policy is a good start, and then some input by a committee would be great.
Councillor Young.
So H, I, and J and 1 were the additions as requested. I guess my only comment is I just found them a bit wordy and not very precise, but that could just be me.
So H, I, and J.
So page numbers?
And the principles first page
Oh,
of the
okay.
policy.
Oh, that's all. Sorry. I think what you're saying, I can live with it, but I don't know, what does the rest of council think? I guess, Councillor Cole, it was your, I think most of these were yours. Does it capture what you feel, and does the rest of council?
I forgot to do something on safety.
I was gonna say, no, there was two. There was the environment and the safety aspect.
I forgot the safety one. But if we're if we're going with the theory that something's better than nothing and we'll fine tune afterwards, I'm fine. Leave it the way it is.
It's easy enough to add if you've got,
Is it in the minutes from our,
There was no wordsmithing on it, but in our Cal minutes, or in the Cal, my notes from the Cal, did mention that safety was a concern, that we wanted added into this document.
Were you able to get wording? Oh,
No, that's what I said, I forgot to do.
oh, okay.
I forgot to ask him, my apologies,
It's all good.
there. I didn't actually have that in my notes, so I think I had it somewhere, but
changes?
What do you think, council?
I would definitely be on the committee for how the policy is structured moving forward. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say about that.
Okay, Councillor Mitchell, go ahead.
I think that probably the main concern that I have is the process of revealing our hands before we put a bid out, and that's, in my view, that's covered in section 3, Article C, when acquisitions is of a confidential or privileged nature and disclosure could reasonably be expected to compromise government confidentiality or cause economic disruption or be contrary to the public interest. And I believe that the current process that we have is completely contrary to the public interest because there's no open bidding process. We tell them how much we're going to spend right off the hop. So there's no discovery of what the actual price is. We tell them what the price is. And we saw that with our OCP bidding process where all the bids come in, except for one, they come in within a few $100s of each other on a $100,000 project. So that's not possible in an actual free bidding process. That wouldn't happen. Because everybody has different costs, and they would all come up with a slightly bigger gap in the different prices. And so I believe that we need to re-examine this, and I'm sure if we strike a committee, we will look at that going forward. But that's the main concern that I have with this document. It's that it is not an open bidding process. We saw with our swimming pool, the minute we got a $300,000 grant from $170,000 to $500,000. And is that a coincidence or is that the fact that our hand was revealed? I don't know.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I can't remember the pool getting up to 500, but anyways, that's fine. We'll look at that. We are an organization where we have a budget every year, and it's easy to find out those numbers. I do hear what you're saying, though. I feel that there are other aspects, though, that of the tender process where it can vary. Like, for example, the OCP, how people engage with the public, what what sort of strategies and things that they're going to present is. Some were very different. So, but I hear what you're saying. Anybody else?
I'd like to make a motion, we approve the purchasing policy as presented.
Seconder for that motion? Seconded by Councillor Barron. Any further discussion? Oh, sorry.
Just say if we get that on the screen.
Oh, please.
So what I'll do while that's being done on page 28, which is page 4 of the purchasing policy, we've added in there purchase orders to be used for any purchases over $100. Is an addition that we didn't have last time.
Oh, that was in there also.
Compared to my documents, I didn't see that in there at all.
No, it wasn't there, so I still haven't changed that.
And then over on G1A, we have in there the words, unless the acceptance of a digital bid is specified in the proposal or tender document and adheres to the delivery parameters stated in the said document. What does that mean? How will we handle a bid that comes in electronically? So it shows up on an email, what's the next step? How does our staff handle that? Are we printing it and we put it in a sealed envelope, or like what is that?
Right, so this is something that, the CEO and myself discussed, because I wasn't probably gonna have electronic in there. I was gonna say that, not to, but he felt that moving forward in this, and certainly we had that situation with COVID where you can't come in or things happen. So the idea is that you're still going to treat it the same way. It would go to the person that, such as if it's the CAO, if it was doing, they would have to come and have to follow the same documentation of the sealed envelope. And you can put it in the seal, we can put it into an envelope, seal it, date stamp it, the same thing. But they're actually sending it to us under the assumption that it will be handled just like any other sealed bid.
Do we have encryption? Are we able to send documents that are secure?
I think.
Not at this point, no.
Yes.
We had a tender policy as opposed to this in the middle of a purchasing policy. First thing I would do would be to talk to the Ministry of Forests, because they started digital bidding, I want to say about 18 months ago. And it is a different procedure, because they don't, the openings I've been at, they don't actually even bring those bids down until after the bid time has closed. And that's when those bids actually get opened. I believe they stay in a closed email format. They close the bidding, then they go upstairs and they print off the applicable pieces that go with the bid. So I think that, I understand what Pete's saying, but I think that the intent is we're going to look at this again. So, almost don't cram something in there until we actually know how it's going to all go out. And especially when we have government in town, that, I'm sure if we gave Angela Gibson a call, she could walk you through what the pitfalls are and what they found that's worked well.
So are you saying not to include it?
I think,
Yeah, go ahead.
This isn't so much for electronic bidding per se. It allows the availability for some of the smaller. The website was a smaller bid, and being the design that it was, I think almost every proponent asked, can we send this digitally instead of a hard copy? And so the requirement was that hard copy was required. However, if you wanted to also send it digitally, that was an option. And some of the smaller things that we do that we're looking for quotes for and you may be right, we may need a full tendering policy based on the amounts. Do we want to go through this very high level process when it's a low dollar amount?
The problem is where you've placed this language is under the acceptance of sealed bids, which then goes further to explain how those bids will be opened and what format will be followed. So what I hear you're mentioning isn't, necessarily, I wonder if this language that for the purposes of what you are speaking to should be included elsewhere and not placed here until we nail down how we're going to do electronic bids or electronic tenders. So that's I'm going to agree with that. Councillor Barron is I don't think this is placed here properly. I don't like this placed here until we have the process to accompany it. What you're looking for is to be able to receive quotes electronically, and you can place that somewhere else under purchasing procedures perhaps, or somewhere else within this document perhaps.
Go ahead. From there, to Councilor Downey. I think the idea was that it states unless the acceptance of a digital bid is specified in the proposal. So if we don't specify that we're going to take digital bids, then this is a moot point. So at this point, and then it's, or the tender document adheres to the delivery parameters, which is going to be in that proposal that we send out, stated in the said document. That's what that's really saying. It's not saying, so if it's not in the proposal, which that's all, you know, I understand what you're saying about having two different processes. That's not an issue. That's not a problem. But we can take that out and just don't accept any.
And just say
Until you-
electronic bids will not be accepted unless specified in the tender document. Because this is supposed to be for staff. So if Julian went to write a tender or down in the harbor, they would read this policy and they would say, okay, I can't say anything about electronic. I have to go to this other step, because this is what the policy is supposed to do, right? Is guide you how you do your job. So
It's a document that's out there. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, so if you want to restate it somehow, if you don't think that language is clear, we can certainly do that. Or just take it out. It's totally up to council's decision. I mean, for now, and then, as you said before, we look at separating maybe a purchasing policy and a tender policy is fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Because you have, you know, we're trying to put everything into one. We're getting small amounts of goods, or maybe a project that's maybe $10,000, it's not the same as a project that's $100,000 or $600,000. They're kind of two different processes.
So it still comes back to, even though it does say, unless the acceptance of a digital bid is specified in the proposal and adheres, yada, yada, it still doesn't, it's still, if you follow through the rest of this, how do you manage it?
So why don't we just strike it?
Well,
Why don't we
Mayor,
just,
we've got I'll call the question. I made a motion just to accept it as is.
Okay.
And with the thought that it needs tweaks, and it's going to go back for review. So.
all right. So motion to approve the purchasing policy as presented. So we have a mover and we have a seconder for that. Do we not? No, we haven't yet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're in discussion.
Sure.
Oh, yeah, that's right, in discussion, yeah. So, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay. I have put a note beside it, Councillor Downey, so for us to look at if we review it, when we review again. Yes.
Were you for or against? You can't not vote.
She did vote.
She did.
before.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm still thinking in my brain. I raised my finger, but
Okay, thank you.
I should have said that before we voted, but Gabriel is one out. We can correct that in the final document. I'm gonna sign or I won't sign.
I thought I did.
That's good. Well, on mine it has 2 L's.
just to be clear, we're saying that this will be coming back.
No,
No,
we're not.
no,
So if you want to make that motion.
it's been approved as is right now.
As is with the caveat that we can form a policy committee in the fall and, you know, you can bring that, you can come to me at any time when you want to bring that to the table. Or you can make a motion to strike the committee right now. Mhm. Or you can review it further and then.
Did Ryan vote?
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
Which way?
In favor?
So did you want to?
There'll be a motion that sits on the table for a while, so
What do
that we won't be able to do anything about literally.
So I can put a motion forward that we will form a committee by this fall to review, what do you guys call it, procedures and policies?
Review this policy. Just-
Specifically this fall. Well, I think that if, without sounding like a cow, I think that we need to look at the whole, like the framework of how the policies and procedures, how it fits together so that it's got flow, like you were saying at the committee meeting, it's got to be, how is it going to be used? Is it for training? It's not just a document that's out there. It's literally, this is how we're expecting things to be done. So this policy definitely, I think, needs tweaks, and I think we all kind of just agreed that, even though we accepted it, something is better than nothing. But the actual format, even just to have a brainstorming session of what the actual format looks like from a visual
So now
standpoint.
you're talking about how you're going to implement these things that are in policy, like what are the next steps?
Well, what's the next policy?
You mean,
Like, we didn't have a purchasing policy, now we have a purchasing policy. What other policies do we have from the towns? I mean, yes, I've got a safety thought in it, I do, but, typically you would have finance policies, you would have HR policies, you would have safety policies. This would fall, to me, fall under finance. So what else, like, what's next? Because if the structure is going to look like this, and if that's where the hiccup is, then why would you keep doing the same thing over and over again?
I lost it. But
Why use the same format if the format isn't?
you mean, as in the staff writes the policy, brings it to us, we go through it? Is that what you're talking about?
I think it's a fair question to ask staff, what's the next policy review that you're working on? Like, if the next one's tendering, or something, then that makes
Well,
sense.
yeah,
Maybe we'll just ask for an annual review of this policy.
Or are you thinking that the tendering is already captured in this policy?
Thank you, Mayor. I think the idea is, am fine if council would like to separate these two policies. I do like the idea of putting something in place right now and reviewing it, just because there is nothing. The tender, as I said before, I think the day-to-day purchasing policy is somewhat different than the tender policy. There's no doubt about that. They're two very different.
kettle of fish.
Yeah, forms. But as for the format, I think the format, it's just a format that I chose. It's, if you look online at some of the purchasing policies, a lot of them follow this format. I've seen other ones that follow formats that you can't even understand what they're saying because there's so much jargon in there, it makes it impossible. You don't know whether you can or you can't. So we're trying to make it, I was trying to make it fairly straightforward and simplistic, not so that it works for everybody, because it's kind of got to go to our fire department and to our harbor and everybody's something they're going to follow, especially in the day-to-day operations. As for other policies, I'm not sure. This is, as far as I know, there is a capital policy. So in finance, the policies you're going to have is the intangible assets and the life expectancy and those items, which there's already one in place. So there's not too many other policies that I can think of that I would need to have implement. I believe there's a HR policies, they're not, or the employee policy that we're looking at reviewing. So, Mr. Nelson.
Maybe a suggestion. Oh,
Yeah, actually, yeah. Go ahead, Councilor Mitchell.
Is there a motion on the floor?
No, there isn't.
Return to the agenda then? Because we shouldn't be having a discussion about something with no motion, it's not a committee at all. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine, but I'm gonna allow Mr. Nelson Smith to speak. Go ahead.
On the discussion of a committee, perhaps council should strike a policies and procedures committee, and therefore all policies, procedures of the town of Fort McNeil could be reviewed systematically, and new ones that need to be discovered brought forward to staff, and ones that need to be reviewed get reviewed.
I guess just a final comment, as we were getting this document last council meeting, we held a cow, we reviewed it. It's come back to us with some additions and some changes in here, and we've just been asked just to approve it as is, and we'll talk about it and review it at another date later. So, you know, we have had no policy, so what we've chosen to do is to throw in a policy to guide staff, saying that in the future, we are going to tweak it. So whatever policy we gave you before, if it gets revised, it goes before them again. Now remember the new policy. Would it not have been better just to nail it the first time as close to what we want instead of leaving it and then rolling up?
It actually came at a council meeting, then we had a committee of the whole, and now it's come again.
That's
So,
exactly what I said. Yeah.
no, I
This
thought,
is our second. This is the first time under with the revised
oh, it's
copy
a revised copy.
and changes put into it. Some we didn't even talk about at our committee of the whole meeting. They're brand new, first time tonight seeing them.
Okay.
So,
All right. You want to make a motion to strike the committee?
I'll make a motion to strike a committee to review specifically this policy.
This policy, not policies period.
Oh, whichever way makes the most sense. I don't want to strike a policy committee and then not actually review this one. So strike a committee and review this policy.
I'll second that.
Minutes just getting typed up, Ryan, thank you. I'm sorry, Councilor Mitchell.
You can call me Ryan, that's okay.
How about motion to strike a policy committee, semicolon, firstly, to review the purchasing policy. Then that implies that it's not a one-time only deal.
Okay, motion to strike, is that the way you want it in a policy committee, or did you switch things around?
Yes, nope.
Oh, okay. Okay, any further discussion on that?
It has to be seconded.
Deborah was by Councilor Mitchell.
Thank you.
Mhm. Go ahead, Councilor Cole.
So who are we envisioning is that, we decide who's on the committee right now, or is that? How does that work?
What do Robert's rules say for that?
Well, it's not got Robert's rules, I think it's, just depends on councils, but we've not had a policy committee in the past. I know with the regional district, they have 3 or 4 people on the policy committee, not all of the board is part of it, so.
Are we including members of the public? Are we including
No.
It's like,
Sorry.
public works or other departments? Maybe we need a report on what purchasing
No.
policy committee would be, I don't know.
No, I don't think so. I think that, I mean, given the way, this council is very hands-on, if you, I don't know, I think it's, whatever department is going to give us a policy, and that policy committee is going to review it and provide feedback.
It's a fair question. What am I voting on? Who's on the policy committee?
You're voting on whether we should have
Form one
a committee.
first, and we can, I will
I
put
guess my
this.
point is, if all of council wants to be on it, then might as well just call it another cow.
Does all the council want to be on? I'm asking the question right now, does all of council want to be on?
I would like to be.
I think I have to by default. The policy isn't my favorite thing. But that's okay.
I'm fine to not be on the committee. Obviously, we'll review. If
Okay,
there's changes to policy, it'll. come
so
before
here's my
council.
suggestion. Can we just vote on this motion? And I'll do the research and I'll come back, and at least you know that,
That this will be coming back.
okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7B, Harbor and Information Center report. Is there discussion, or do you just want to receive, sorry, what would you like to discuss or receive?
Sorry, it's okay. Receive it.
Move to receive, okay, second for that? Any discussion on it? Okay, go ahead, Michelle.
Showers open or closed? I think we asked this question for the month of May.
I have one question.
Just a second, Councillor Mitchell, Councillor Downey was asking a question, and then you're next, okay?
No problem.
My question is, are the showers open or closed right now?
Closed.
Open.
They are?
Yeah, they're open at limited hours, so between opening and closing, so that the staff can ensure that they're clean when the users are done using them. Whereas previously, we handed out to the fishermen so that they could use them 24/7.
I understand that, but the document says that they're closed to the public, so I guess the wording is closed to the public, but open to fishermen.
This would have been in June.
That was the case in June.
Yeah, so this is reporting on June, we're in
And
July.
when did they open?
I would have to go back and check.
Towards the end of June.
I was there and somebody came in to ask and staff told them no, but just so you know.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor,
That's why I said no.
okay.
So
Councillor Mitchell?
apologize.
I'm not sure if this would be part of their report, but I was wondering if there's any progress on the plans for the upgrades to the marina
Good question.
that we could be part of.
I know Julian's not with us this evening. Do you have any,
I would defer the question to Julie.
we'll make sure that, Julian has asked the question and I'll get that reported back to council, okay?
Sure.
Any other questions from the report? Okay, all those in favor of receipt? Opposed, carried. June 2020 checklisting. Receipt? Seconder? Okay, Councillor Cole. Any questions on the checklisting? Any questions from you, Councillor Mitchell?
Only one I was curious about, and is the food purchases. Is there something in there that I should know about?
Right.
The food purchases, there, I think those are fire department too, or the fire department, I noticed that too.
Yeah, what's the history of some of the eliminating?
Go ahead,
Councilman Sheffield, the mayor, is my understanding, this is for, I'd have to actually talk to the fire chief about this, but they do have a food allowance. And the idea with that food allowance, it was my understanding that when they are at a fire, that they, sometimes need food brought into as the fire is taken. But I know there hasn't been any fires that to my knowledge at this time, so I'd have to really defer that question, which we certainly can ask the fire chief, what these purchases are for.
I just will make a comment that, my understanding is that we are, itemizing the different, line items for all the various departments. So, I believe that whatever their food budget is, because they are now itemized, they will quickly become aware when they're ending that budget for any other budget item in any department. So that at least is a good thing. And at the end of the year, we'll have a really good idea and probably much more clear picture as to the spending and plan. In the past, it was just one lumped budget item, one number, and not really parted out. And so I think departments will find the new system much easier to work within their budgets. But we will ask that question of the, sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Oh.
well, I guess it will help us next year when it comes to the budgeting process.
Yes.
You know, what the line items are and what they're for, what the policies are that drive them.
Okay.
I'm more curious about the policy that just we provide food. the workers then, or is that volunteers or whatever it is, that's all, just wondering about it. And I will leave it at that.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Downey?
I did notice the food as well, but I also looked at the dates of the invoices, and I do know they were doing a lot of training.
Yeah.
So I attributed the food quite likely to food provided during a training process, and I think that's
Probably it. That's what I was thinking as well.
Just wanted to, through the mayor to the council, just to, I will be bringing forth a, it's almost completed, a revenue expenditures up to date, so budget, like the budget amount and the year to date budget amount, but the, to the end of the month, like end of June. The expenditures, we just had a few accounts for tweaking. We have noticed, or I've noticed that there's some accounts that we're thinking are redundant, they're duplicated, or they're not used, and they don't have, some small budget amounts, some. So it's kind of an in process because it wasn't used before. So we're trying to get things up. I think one of the areas that I'm trying to work with department heads is to say, just because you have a total budget of this, I mean, you don't, some items might be over or under, but the reality is we want to have our line item budgeted to pretty much what you're going to spend. So you can't just say, well, I'm over here, so, or I'm under here, so I'll use that over here. You can if you really need it, but the idea is to make sure your budget is correct moving forward, and you know where you are going to be spending that money.
All right. Did you have? Okay, all right. So if there are no further questions, all in favor of receipt? Opposed? Carried. 9A, Island Coast Economic Trust Capital Restart Funding Program. Move for discussion. Seconder? Okay, great.
Thank you, Mayor Wickstrom.
Over to you.
Yeah, so I brought this up twice now, once and at the CAL. I am prepared to sort of make a motion to say go for it. I understand if there's some concerns about maybe how the program would be set up or some of the details of the budget. So I'm sort of want to gauge council interest and maybe a committee to sort out some of those questions and have a little more of a specific plan. I mean, it's a pretty basic application. I think, our staff could easily handle that. But I understand like how the program would be set up if there would be concerns about that. So if there's a general interest in that, fine. But if it's if you think it's not a good idea, then just let it stay right there.
I think that the big picture idea is a good one. I just have a couple of notes that I am, I guess I'm wondering how it's going to be managed. So, what forms are going to be used, what policies around lending, what public works time is involved, if an item's damaged, those kinds of things. So those are my concerns. And I'll open it up to the rest of council for comment.
Well, I think it's a good idea to look for avenues to get things moving again. This seems to offer that. I think following up on it would be good.
Following up on it as in looking how we can implement it, or are you saying the application thereof and figure the rest out later?
Well, if there's no cost to doing an application, then I'd be in favor of just doing it, yes.
Councillor Downey and then Councillor Aaron.
for the benefit of the public. Could we verbalize what exactly we are considering using this funding for? We discussed it at length at the CAL, and there is no mention of the intent behind this funding application anywhere in our agenda this evening.
Okay. You want to recap it, please,
That'd be
Councillor?
great.
Thank you.
Apologize for not putting that in writing, but we did verbally discuss it at the first council meeting. The idea is this small iced tea, which full acronym?
And a post-economic
Of
justice.
course, small capital commercial restart funding grant was announced. It is a $15,000 grant matching, so up to a $30,000 project. It is focusing on innovative new ways of doing things, which allow businesses and industries alternative revenue generation streams. We qualify for the project being a local government or nonprofit. Key to this application is a shovel-ready project. So what things are not included would be like programming, administration, research, another study, that kind of thing. Again, it's a 50% matching. I feel most of the cost will go to the equipment itself, and it holds its value. So I don't see a risk to the public purse per se, as I believe if the program was not successful, that initial 50% of the cost of the equipment could be recouped. And my idea, or the thought in my mind for Port McNeill, is this allows retailing and restaurants to move outside, try vending outside, try serving food outside in a low-cost environment. The tents would be an extremely reduced rate to encourage local businesses to try them out. If it works for the business, they can look at purchasing their own or continue to rent them. The nominal fee to rent them would cover the maintenance and the administration time if council chooses in the office, or perhaps the nominal rental fee could go towards additional purchases or different styles of tents or shelters. I am proposing small 10 by 10 tents, but open to the idea of bigger tents. The idea being the 10 by 10s will encourage social distancing, so you and your family unit could be under a tent perhaps, or it could also be used inside for that purposes. This funding is aimed at commercial, so I would think the focus of the application would be for businesses, but if the business uptake is not sufficient, I could see community groups being sort of second in line to use the equipment, and perhaps even residents.
Councillor Barron, you wanted to, what? Councillor Mitchell, would you mind just muting your phone? Sorry.
I will.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor.
If we were to put in an application, how specific does it have to be? Do we have to, like right now, if we're gonna apply tomorrow, do we have to say 10 by 10 tents? And on the other hand, can we apply for the maximum 15 and then say they let us know within 5 days that we get the 15, and then we choose that we're only gonna match 7? So can we only take 7 of the 15 that we've been awarded?
My understanding with ICD is they're very flexible and that wouldn't be a problem.
So kind of along the lines of what Ryan was saying, we could apply for it, and if we get it, we can then hash it out or say no. You did say last time it's kind of a first come, first served basis. So I think it sounds like a neat idea, to be honest. And I think it'll either work for what you're intending it to, or it won't. I don't know that I'd be willing to commit $15,000 to be matched. 5. But again, if we don't have to determine that in order to apply for it, then,
Councillor Downing? Oh, I thought you had something in. I just wanted to say again, my thing is the staff time that it's going to take to implement all of this. I think it could get legs that could take our staff in a direction that, away from other things as well. Okay, go ahead.
That is a concern of mine as well. If we apply for this, it comes back, we will ultimately be approving the plan. So if at that time it comes and we've had input from Public Works and office staff, and it's just not gonna work, we can change our mind and scale it back. But,
Okay, another group to implement.
yeah, long-term, for sure. Let's just really, this is tangible support for business, not another program, a link or something. This is something we can do. You know, I have talked to, a restaurant or two that would like to take advantage of it. I'm going to.
Can I ask one other question before you make a motion?
Sure.
Have you spoken with the chamber and gotten, what other feedback have you gotten from the business community that makes you feel that this would be a good idea?
I have been trying to get a hold of the new chamber representative, and I would hope we would have a letter of support when the application goes here. Joint support, but I can't speak to the timing of that. I'm not going to name specific businesses, but I've talked to a few, and they see that as a viable option to try outdoor retailing, and yeah, if we apply, it's a good time to canvass it some more. So that being said, I'd like to make a motion. The town of Port McNeil applied for iced tea small capital commercial restart funding grant to create a low-cost pop-up tent
Hold on a
rental.
second. I see. It's actually called the Small Capital Restart Funding Grant. I know it's a lot of, Small Capital Restart Funding Grant. Yeah.
To create a low-cost pop-up tent rental program for local business. And
Impacted by COVID. I think you have to put that in, impacted or
This-
affected.
this
That's gotta be in
doesn't
there.
really,
It absolutely does. Wow.
we could name a whole bunch of
I'm just
points,
putting
we could
Yeah.
name a whole bunch of points in here, but I refer to the application, so then, we don't need to say up to 15,000 or this or that. I feel it's- If we're applying for it, it follows these guidelines.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Okay. Any further discussion? So I'll call the question. All those in favor of applying for the grant? Ryan, how are you feeling about that? I can't hear you and I can't see you, so I need to,
Oh, sorry.
I have one question.
How am I feeling? I'm voting in favor of it. I like the idea, and, yeah. It's a positive step. It's nothing ventured, nothing gained. I think it's worth a try.
So, sorry, we're at the vote. Yeah. Those opposed? Okay. Motion is carried. Okay,
Did we ask for any further discussion after?
yeah, I did.
Okay.
Nobody said anything wild, did you?
I do have one question, but I'll just ask it anyways. How soon will this application go in if it's first come, first served?
That's up to staff, I guess. I'm totally willing to help, but I'm also 100% confident staff can put it. I mean, it's half done, it's formatted. I made my point, so something to work with. To me, it could be turned around, perhaps maybe applied with, again, I have no idea what the staff workload, but within a week or two, and the point is they review in 5 days.
Yeah.
And then go over that. And I don't think, the explaining how the program's gonna work, like, certainly the budget would need to be developed, but we don't need to get into the nitty-gritty with Julian's picking up tents at 10 p.m.
No, I just wonder how soon will we get it in so that we will get that answer back. That's
Can we direct that to?
whatever council would like to see. If you would like to make this a number one priority, we can drop some of the other things we're doing and prioritize this.
So within like later next week or like a week, is that a fair timeframe?
I'd like to see it out the door with, by the end of next Friday. Today was Tuesday, but Friday next week.
I concur.
Thank you. Item 9B, museum operations. Sorry, can I have a motion please for discussion? Okay, seconded by Councilor Cool. I'm going to defer this one to Councilor Barron, because this was a baby. You were quite enthusiastic. Was it at the COW meeting, the committee of the whole? I know that before, I'll give you the floor first, but before we were kind of at either keeping the doors closed, open for limited hours, or closed and having staff organize, categorize, and brainstorm. I don't know if the rest of the council remembers it the same way that I do. I think that's kind of what we're deciding this evening. Councilor Barron, did you want to speak to the report that you brought to us?
Dumped it somewhere.
Oh.
Well, I think, and the CAO, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're gonna come back and say, who's looking after the museum? Is it the society or is it the town?
Right now, neither.
A letter will be signed shortly.
Well, technically, it's still under the control of the society then.
So if the society wants to open it, they do not.
They do not. I did speak to the former chair, and I believe our staff member graciously said that they would write the letter of relinquishment, and all we needed to garner was a signature. And so that letter is almost complete, or will be complete by the end of the
It's
week?
complete and sent.
Okay, and sent. So it might be prudent for the liaison or myself to go with a letter to the chair and have them physically sign it. So I would say for all intents and purposes, it will be relinquished by the end of the week. I've already alerted them to the fact that I will be coming with a letter to sign. So let's consider that it's relinquished. So what is the next step then for council?
Okay, but a quick one, I'm a little unsure on how the employee was employed by the society, so
Well,
the
that's a
society has dealt with the employee, is that an assumption, correct assumption? Or we are to deal with the former employee?
Well, I guess that's a
Okay,
discussion, and
clarification.
if honestly, if we're talking about the current employee, we probably should be going in.
Is it our employee or not?
Yeah.
That's my question.
Well, it's a discussion for council to have. This person was employed for a long time. So I would probably still lean towards having that open discussion in that particular portion of the count. Because it is,
How do we separate that though? So it's either all in camera or not, but it's kind of where I'm at right now.
Well, I guess that, for me, the question is, are they going through our town payroll or are they going through the society's payroll?
Societies.
So it's
So it's not ours,
it's not
no,
our
it's-
employee.
no, I guess so, it's just a matter of if you, yeah.
And see, I put on, under engagement, on my little vision board, I guess we use Leanne's word. I have their volunteers, question mark, paid support, question mark. I feel pretty strongly that the town should take it over, at least in the interim. I also heard Councillor Cole at the last meeting, with the idea that another society possibly take it over, but I'm not sure. I mean, I think as a council, we have to decide what we're gonna do. I think again, sound like the cow, but I think I have a vision. I think we need to get that building, we're paying hydro on it, we're paying electricity and everything, we need to get some movement in there, we need the air. We need some life in it, and, you know, the way I explained it there under revenue, redesign space for inclusion of visitors info center, satellite to the Harvard office, or maybe the opposite, maybe at the Harvard office, what's there is only actually a satellite and it's actually based out of the museum. I don't know, maybe it's vice versa. It gives people a second avenue. You know, there's people that question our one-way street going down. There was concerns about putting the EV station there because of the lack of parking. So now you have another secondary spot where people can go to get tourism info and information on the town. You know, is there a way to tie it in with the tourism committee and there be some use there? Granted, it was only 20 minutes I was in there, but I'm trying to think when you go up the stairs and off to the left is the archival room, which was the only room that my skin started to itch like it was moldy. And then you have the other side of it, which I think if that kind of got cleared out, it's a nice, bright, beautiful space. You know, that could be where an artist in residence was. And then you're drawing people up the stairs or going through. Under considerations and concerns, I've got storage because I think some of the stuff, memorabilia may have to be packed up and come out. Like I noticed Port Hardy right now is doing an exhibit on first responders. Well, they probably had to go and dig and find all that stuff to put together this display, and that would be part of how I would like to see the cataloging done. You know, what things could you fit together? You know, kind of take a calendar, and you've got Forestry Week in, I think it's April. So, you know, what pieces have you got that are definitely forestry, but then what could that phase into? Does that kind of make sense?
So here's my thought. You can eat an elephant if you do it one bite at a time, right?
Exactly.
So I guess what would be the first bite that we would do? In the short term for the summer, does council want to see it opened up for the public, maybe with COVID guidelines by appointment, having some staff in there, and if it's by appointment, those staff can also go through and categorize. And I mean, this is a vision where I really think we do need a committee that, you know, would lead this, that may eventually go into a society. So in the short term, for the summer months, and that's where I'm kind of looking. I don't know, as council just want to do the whole thing at the same time. It's a lot of work. But I'm hearing that it's an asset that we want to see at least open and utilized. So what does that look like for the summer? You know, the possibility of maybe employing one or two more summer students as well. Did you, sorry, Councillor Cole? Yeah. Did you have something that you wanted to add, Councillor Mitchell, before Councillor Cole speaks?
No, I want to hear Derek has to say.
Okay.
Okay. I'm concerned about the big picture of maybe this building holds a piece of the puzzle for our general building problem, the old school and meeting. So I'm all for some sort of maybe temporary solution. I'm frankly leaning towards closing it with the uncertainty of COVID and like cleaning in there, and like it poses a lot of questions. And we're taking a risk with, you know, students' health and stuff that maybe isn't warranted because maybe we don't have a lot of tourists anyways. But that being said, my main concern is we're going to go like whole hog in right now when we haven't figured out all these other problems with our buildings.
So Downey?
Question for staff is, do we have staff that could go in and do archival or cataloging work of the artifacts that are in there currently?
Yes, we currently do.
How many, what FTEs do we have available?
One summer student.
Who's also currently in the office.
Correct.
Yep, I personally would support having a student be assigned to the museum for the purposes of dusting, clean, catalog, note, and find out what we have there. My understanding is that some time ago that process had been started. I don't know where it's at. but it was begun at one point in time. And I feel we need to do that in order to assess what we want to do with the artifacts in there and what is going to be the best use of the resources and the assets that we have within that building. We can do that with the doors closed or by appointment. We can do it with doors closed to begin with, see where COVID goes, and then possibly by appointment or that's a moving target. I don't need to be stuck on something.
Councillor Mitchell, did you want to add anything?
Well, I guess, first of all, my first thing is we have no authority to do anything at the moment because we're still waiting to get that transfer of control back. So we're recapping the decision. And I think that if we're having this discussion, that if we're going to take over the operation, that we have to have a properly developed business plan in place. Or does this be another money loser like every other business that we have? We need to make sure that there's a plan in place to, if we're going to consolidate it with something else or whatever it is, would be a profitable or at least a very astutely run operation. It just can't be slapped together. It has to be done effectively.
I'm just going to add that I feel by the end of this week that won't be an issue anymore, Councillor Mitchell. And I would concur if Councillor Downey wanted to make a motion to at least go in there and categorize and see where we're at, and that will give us a good idea moving forward whether it's viable business.
We can make that motion subject to the society releasing it.
Yes.
And it can happen, we'll wait
Yes.
for another meeting.
Okay, I would motion, are you typing? Subject to the release of from the Society of the Museum responsibility. The town will assign I'm going to say student, I hope that's okay. We'll assign a student, employee.
Can we just say employee? Maybe?
We'll
I
assign
Then you're-
staff time. We'll
Yeah,
assign
'cause
staff time.
I wouldn't, yeah.
Well,
There's going to be oversight by senior staff, so. But I get the intent of your.
Okay, let's go youth employee then. No, student, I like it. Well,
youth employee, this is the programs.
yeah, youth employee.
I thought we didn't give us that money anyway.
Oh, sorry,
Just wondering, we have a great asset that's been with the museum for many years. Is this motion going to?
well, yeah, and that is why I said I don't, yeah, I know. Sorry, I'm finding it hard.
Separate.
I'm
It's
finding it
not
hard.
employee.
I'm finding it hard to articulate, but I'm gonna give it a shot. I really don't want someone to find out at a public meeting. That's why I would really like the employee piece to be brought into, that's why I was trying to get it to go in camera. And so, yes, that employee was not employed by us, but it was somebody that was employed for 15 years. And I just think it would stink to find out from the public.
Okay, so assign an employee. Okay,
Yeah.
that the town employ someone to assess and catalog the assets held within the museum building.
Just, like, employ as needed or something, so it implies just one person.
Assess the assets held within the building. Assess the assets. Catalog and assess. It was both. Sorry,
So,
held within the museum building.
so that does, but it's just the same one person, we're only gonna, that's the kind of problem I have. I'd like to see.
Says someone.
What if we hire two people?
We could still, we could
a
still.
student and the other.
It isn't, we might, I mean, we're,
The-
right now, we're at the
The
beginning.
town employs staff, you know, and if there's a slow day, and everyone's totally fuzzy, you could send 4 people down.
Well, right,
Staff are already
Right,
hired, so
that's
you're
enough.
assigning staff then. You're assigning staff.
Yeah, we already employ the staff, and like I say, that's the whole part of the discussion, and I understand what you're
I'm
saying.
gonna revise this again.
it hasn't been seconded, so go ahead.
That motion, subject to the release from the Museum Society responsibility, the town seek to catalog and assess the assets held within the museum building. And then we can go from there. Whether that's an employee, a new one, or whether we're allocating an current employee over to it.
Okay, museum is spelled wrong at the top there.
Subject to the release from the Museum Society of their responsibility, yes.
Okay. The town will seek to catalog, or just,
Yeah, we'll see.
okay.
Our English teachers
Yeah,
are so
so
proud right now.
we will read this out again. Motion, subject to the release from the Museum Society of their responsibility, the town will seek to catalog and assess the assets in the museum building. I have a seconder for that motion? Okay, any further discussion on that? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, carried.
So how we get it will be another
Yeah,
discussion.
another discussion, exactly.
That
Yeah.
was action on the museum.
Yeah. Thank you. Item 10A, council reports. Just before we go around the table, it is easier for staff if we have them written. I'm going to forego mine because I was delinquent this time and did not write anything down. So anybody though that would like to report anything. Mine would have been lengthy, which is why I'm not choosing not to. If we have 1 or 2 items, go right ahead.
I concur, we've been trying to write it down, and I'll just try to leave it to them. Report.
We can do it whatever, however you want, doesn't matter. I just, feedback has been that it's difficult when we.
It is for the
this
minute
way it's-
taker.
Well, and also for the
intent of
record,
our
you know,
report.
for if somebody's not here, it's in the minutes, then they're able to read exactly what we've all attended for the public, right, when it's in the agenda.
Or perhaps
But I
if
didn't
it's a
say that
verbal-
ahead of time, so Councillor Downey, I'm not saying you can't, you know.
Or if it's a verbal report, maybe you just don't get any notes taken of it, it's your report.
I do have something I do want to share though.
Okay.
I took a recovery engagement call on behalf of the mayor on July 2nd. And what the ministry had done is they lumped together 20 communities across the province that were of like size, not necessarily similar industries, but like size communities across the province. And the focus was on COVID recovery. So just the Coles notes, half of the groups chimed in on the call with comments, and there was a commonality between many of the communities. What has come to the surface through this time of COVID is the need for connectivity. We are fortunate here in Port McNeill with our fiber optic, but many communities are not. So across the province, connectivity is an issue. Food security is an issue. And by that, that's we're talking everything there, whether it is being able to bring goods into a community because of highways that were closed due to blockades and shortages coming from warehouses. And also in the interior, we have a lot of ranches who have product, and there's only a few places where, a few slaughterhouses where meat can be processed. So they're asking for more processing plants for meat. The other issue was built housing. Housing is an issue. And the other one that became prevalent was the need for childcare. Many people are unable to work because their children are at home. and the facilities available for childcare are diminished. And so it's affecting employability. So that across the province, and I'll just give you a short summary of some of the communities that were in on the call. Burns Lake, Lumley, Fruitvale, 100 Mile House, Tumbler Ridge, Clearwater, Pemberton, Warfield, Chetwynd, Barrier. So those are some who actually took the call. Some of them weren't able to join in. I can put that in writing, but I just give you the Coles notes, what's happening across the province.
Anybody else?
Harbor Committee went on.
The Harbor Committee went up.
We're meeting again in 2 weeks, or 1.
Excellent. Okay, item 10B, letter of support for the LEAP program. Before Councillor Cole gives us a quick little rundown, I did change the last line on the letter and did put it on letterhead late in the day. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. We are wholeheartedly in support of this initiative and signed it on behalf of council. Go ahead if you would like to.
Sure, thank you. Seems like something pretty easy to get behind. This comes out of the COVID Recovery Committee, which is an offshoot of the Ventus Society, Vancouver Island Tourism and Attraction Society. Training. That's just what I thought I'd nailed it. So yeah, this program will be a 10-week program online, so that people can fit it in their schedules. It's a free program. They're proposing 10 spots, and the intention of this is for underemployed people. There's going to be daycare offered as well, and the idea is this could be the start of somebody getting into digital marketing and really hopefully help some of our small businesses in town where we have some local they can turn to for help in the World Wide Web and the social media. So I think it's a good program. I really was not able to pin down the funding source thereafter at this point, but I imagine there'll be multiple funding sources, and they're looking to get this going in the fall. And if there's any questions, but I think it's a pretty easy one to support. There's no real ask from us. I think we're indirectly supporting it through our support of the Ventus Committee, and they are in support of it as well.
Any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Downey. Did Ventus put this forward, or did North Island College just asking for that?
Correct.
Or Ventus asking?
Ventus, I fair to say, is probably considering partially funding this as well. So I'd like to make a motion to supply a support
Right,
letter.
letter of support.
And I'll
Which we
second that.
Motion that a letter of support is written for the
Port Hardy and District Chamber of Commerce
application
Digital Elevation Expertise Program proposal.
written for the Port Hardy and District Chamber of
The
Commerce.
Fort Hardy, like they're helping. I don't
It
really
says
think
here
they're
the
driving
Mount
it.
Washington Digital Expertise Program.
I would just say that call it the North Island College Deep Program.
Okay.
I mean, you can spell the acronym if you want.
So I'll have to adjust the letter then.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. Sorry, I thought that, I understood that it was the Port Hardy Chamber of Commerce that was, it says initiated by.
Yeah, it was initiated by the college, and they've asked the Fort Hardy Chamber to handle the application. That's my understanding. It is driven by the college and distributed.
I'm just going by the letter that you gave me, so the letter and it says.
Okay,
Yeah.
That was the letter they gave, so.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Okay,
That's my understanding is correct on that.
I can
sorry,
call for-
motion that a letter of support is written for the North Island College Youth Program. Okay.
Derek and myself.
Moved by Derek, And seconded by Councilor. I don't know if you have to write mover and seconders now, do we? No? Okay. All right, any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, carried. Okay. There are no items from in camera to be made public, but there is a motion, 12A, council to go in camera under section 91J, information that's prohibited or information that if were presented in a document would be prohibited from disclosure under 21, the Freedom of Information Act. A motion for that, moved by Councillor Barron, seconded by Mitchell. Downey, okay. All those in favor? Is carried. Questions from the public first. I know that there was a question from the media, it came from my phone, but we're gonna go. Questions from the public. Is there any public? Or is it only media? Any questions from the public? Oh, there's a down there under chat. Okay. So there doesn't seem to be from the public, none from Bill McQuarrie, but there is a question from Kathleen O'Reilly. Will the museum be opened or closed for the summer?
No.
And so I believe we have decided that it is closed with work being done, possible assessment.
It's close to the public.
Close to the public. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Hopefully, Kathleen, if you can, you can let me know if you didn't hear, yes?
I would like council to consider amending the in-camera agenda to include talking about employee relations, so maybe we can talk about the previous museum
Relations, okay.
That's okay.
91C.
91C. So if we can backtrack to also have a motion to go in camera for 91C employee relations. That's made by Councillor Cole, seconded by Councillor Barron. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. Okay. All right. Seeing, are there any other questions? Sorry, just double check there. No. So seeing no further questions from the public and the media, motion to adjourn and go in camera as per the two sections. Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. Thank you.
I need to invite for that one.
Sorry?
I need an invite for that.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Laura's nodding her head.
There's nothing else on that.